Hello, Aben here, Senator Jez, and today we are talking about Charles Sparkley. So, Charles Sparkley here. Bit of a story about this. I've had Charles Sparkley for just over a year, and this guitar has taken over my number one spot from my 1989 Les Paul, Epiphone Les Paul. That was one of the very first ones produced. It was one of the Japanese models, and it's been my number one for years. Then I get this guitar, and it quickly becomes my number one over the Les Paul. So I was in a thrift store last year, and I saw this in the case, and they had it marked for $100. Yeah, it didn't play all that well, but that day at the thrift store, they were having a everything is half off sale. So I got the guitar for $50. I'm like, let's see what we can do. So I got home. They had very thick strings on it, and they were not in that great a shape. The guitar looks like it had never been played, actually. And this guitar was made somewhere between 87 and 89, I've realized. Got the strings off, did a setup on it, put some nice new strings on it, and I'm like, whoa, this guitar actually does play well. It's got a very fast neck. I'm guessing about a 16, 17-inch radius. Haven't really checked, but it's almost completely flat. That's something I had to get used to. I'm used to a little bit of curvature in the radius of the fretboard. The pickups were kind of hot, and they sound all right. Um, and I started playing it, and then it became my number one. But I've always had a few things that I wanted to change on it. So a little bit about the history of Charles Sparkley, though. Mike's in the way, but oh well. Uh, has a partial serial number, but I wasn't able to find anything on that. But in doing research, I realized that Memphis was made at one point in Japan, maybe at the Matsumoto, I think it's Matsumoto factory, and then it moved and to Korea. At first, I thought this may have been one of the Japanese models, which meant it may have been a twin made in the same plant around the same time as my Les Paul. But I do believe this isn't an 87. I believe it's more of an 89. And I believe this was made in Korea. And that would make this a Samick guitar. It's under the name Memphis. Um, so from what I remember of Samick at that time, which I was looking at Samicks at the time, that was about the time I was shopping for CW Killer there, my Les Paul. I think this would have probably gone for between 3 and 500 back in the 80s. It's was not a top of the line, and I'll tell you a little bit about that as we go. So there are some things that bug me about Charles Sparkley. It is a super strat. It's a super strat there with the humbucker single, and it's got a coil tap on it, which I liked when I bought it. Problem is, I thought the coil tap was either wired wrong or didn't work because it just stayed a humbucker no matter what. It took me a couple of months of playing it to realize that the coil tap only works in position 2, which makes a lot of sense because to get that strat quack in the 2 position, you'd want to mix the 2 single coils. It always bugged me that I had a single coil in the number 2 position, but not in the number 1 position because I'd love to have played the single coil just as a bridge pickup. That's always bugged me. Another thing that bugs me about it is, as playable as the neck is, these tuning, the tuning is just not up to par. It may have been at one time, but they are very hard to turn. They're very hard to get accurate. You'll get tension, then it feels loose, and suddenly you've overshot tuning by sometimes up to a half a tone. Then try to bring it back down. It seems like it's hard to loosen. Bam, then you're way low on the tuning. Then once you get the tuning in place, the saving grace of this guitar is that it's got great tuning stability. I played this for my 5-hour show for the Wake Forest Veg Fest, and I brought this and the Les Paul thinking I was going to start with this because it's lighter and I'm going to be out there a long time, but I'd probably have to switch to the Les Paul at some point. And I only had to do a minor tuning adjustment once, and I played the entire, it was 4.5 hours with just the Memphis Strat here, just Charles Sparkley. But that's definitely a problem. And I'm amazed that it has the tuning stability that it has because this trim system, it doesn't have a block. It has a piece of steel that's been bent to be where a block would be here, but it doesn't have a solid block. It's actually a bent piece of steel, so it's not solid. That being said, I'm not a big trim user. I generally just use it for a put a little wobble in there. I don't do any dive bombs or anything, but it's still it maintains tuning stability, so that's pretty cool. The pickups themselves, like I said, they're hot. I find that the bridge pickup lacks a bit of bottom and a little bit of oomph. This was obviously meant to be an entry level or a mid level shred guitar back in the 80s with the flat fretboard, the humbucker single. And there's a lot of power coming out of the bridge pickup, but just not a lot of character. And the single coils are okay. And if you're a guitarist, okay sometimes isn't good enough. I mean, it's been good enough, and I get some great tones out of this. I want better tones out of it. So I've got a 3-point plan to turn Charles Sparkley into a top killer guitar. And part one of that is going to be part of this video. I just bought new pickups from Guitar Fetish, and going into the bridge is the Dream 180. So it's got a pearl finish on it. Pretty pickup. This one, I've dealt with some Guitar Fetish pickups before on other people's guitar, and I'm actually a fan. For the price, you get great pickups, generally. I mean, there's always going to be a dud. But this one was labeled as, let me see if we can get that in there. This one was labeled as having the bottom end and the richness of a PAF. They're wound not hot, but they're not wound. They're I think they're about 9K, I think it said. But it has that Gretsch sparkle on top, and that intrigued the hell out of me. I could see getting some Texas boogie out of this. So that's going to be my humbucker pickup, and it does have a coil tap. So that's good. I mean, it's a 4-wire, so I can do the coil tap, so I can get a true single coil sound in the bridge too. For my singles, I'm going with the, they call these the metal foils. Now, this is a modern take on the gold foils. Now, Guitar Fetish has gold foil pickups that are meant to be traditional, to kind of mimic the old gold foil pickups on the Teiscos and all that stuff. This is a modern take. This is not a true gold foil. This is what they call the metal foil. And the thing that got me about these is they're not really hot. I've got 6,000 for, yeah, I think that's what it was. 6,000 for the bridge and for the middle and the neck. And they put in there that you get a really good strat quack. When my home position on this guitar 99% of the times is position 4. So that got me on these. They said they have a very nice tone, sound great, and that they really give that quack. So that's what's going into my single coil positions. I got the wiring harness from Guitar Fetish, which is going to give me a coil split, a push-pull on the bottom tone that will split the humbucker. That way I can have it in position 1 and position 2, which will be cool. I'm also putting locking tuners on this as part of this first part. They're not name brand. I wanted to get a decent quality, but something I could leave on this neck. I'll talk about that when I get to the third part of the upgrade. I'll talk about that. They're adequate. I got them, pulled them out, made sure they were good, and they're going to be a massive improvement over these. That's the important thing. So that's phase 1. That's what's going to happen today. Phase 2 is going to be, I'm going to pull this out. I'm going to put a block in here. I'm not going to change the whole trim system. I like the trim system on here. I'm just going to put a block in where that's just bent metal. That's going to be phase 2. And the only reason it's not phase 1 is because I don't have it here with me today. So, I'm just going to do that down the road. Right now, the tuning stability is fine on this and everything. This is more of a want than a need at the moment because the trim bridge is doing its job at the moment. Phase 3 is the big one. And this is why I'm not going to put ultra premium tuning pegs on here. I'm just going to put a stopgap. It's because phase 3, I'm changing the neck. And I know I just said this is a great playable neck. It's a comfortable neck. It's a fun neck. There's 2 reasons why I'm changing the neck. One, is practicality. 2 is a little bit of vanity. I'm not all that proud of it. I like the neck. I and I've gotten used to it being flat, to having a very high radius neck. Like I said, 16 or 17. It's very flat. But I really want to get something more around the 12 inches. I believe the Epiphone Les Paul is between, my 89 CW Killer is between 10 and 11 inches radius. I'm not a big fan of the Fender between 9 and 10-inch radius. I like that. So I'm thinking I'm going to go for like a 12-inch radius neck on here. I think that would feel even more natural to me, even though I like this neck. And the other reason that I want to change this is I am tired of having to give this explanation that this is not a bad guitar, that it's a very playable guitar, that this was probably, like I said, a $300 to $500 entry-level shred guitar back in the 80s. And I'm basically turning it into a parts caster anyway, but I'm just tired of explaining the Memphis name. I get a lot of crap from people locally here. They kind of make jokes about the Memphis name and all, and why don't I get a real guitar? And I'm not proud of that because this is a real guitar. I mean, I played a 5-hour show, 4.5-hour show with this guitar. But I'm just tired of dealing with the people telling me or putting me down because they have a higher dollar level guitar. Whatever, I don't care. It plays nice. It's fun to play. That's what I like. I'm changing the neck, so that's why I'm going with not the premium tuners on this one. Because when I pull this neck off, I'm going to leave the tuners on it, and I'm going to put premium tuners on the next neck. And that way I'll have this neck ready to go. If whatever reason I want to put it back on for whatever reason, I'll have the tuners on it and everything. And then I'm going to put some premium tuners on the new neck. That's a little bit in the future because I'm going to be fine with this after stage 1. So stage 2 and stage 3 are down the road, not planned. It's just going to happen one day. And that is what's happening with Charles Sparkley. And so I'm about to get started on this, changing out the pickups. I'm going to change out the pickups first. Then I'm going to change out the tuners. And next time you see Charles Sparkley, it's going to look a lot different, sound different. And it's going to be like a whole new guitar to play with. Cheers. So here we are. That last video was taken May 23rd. Today is the 6th of June. I believe it's the 6th of June. If it's not, yeah, whatever. I think it's the 6th of June. A lot of things happened. So I got the time lapse, did everything. Turns out I had to route out some parts of the guitar. I had to make the channel for the selector switch longer for the bigger selector switch that came. I had to put new new holes for the screws in there. I had to route out some parts of almost everything on the pick guard there. On the inside of the guitar, I had to route out some of the wood and everything to make everything fit. So I got everything in place, got everything plugged in. The thing about Guitar Fetish pickups is they have the quick plug system, which is no solder. I only had to solder one thing, and that was the ground wire. And even then, I didn't have to because they do send a crimping thing, crimping tube that you can just use the existing ground wire. But I wanted to solder the new ground wire in, so I soldered that in. Everything else was plugged. So I plugged in everything, got it all set, put the guitar back together, put new strings on it, nothing, no sound, nothing. So that started an odyssey of me trying to figure out, I'm like, am I that person that gets a plug-in system pre-wired for pickups and I still find a way to mess it up? So I got really kind of not upset, just kind of disappointed. And here and there, I'd see if I could fix this, fix that. I was about ready to write it off. I'm like, oh my God, I messed up my guitar. I messed up Charles Sparkley. Well, I finally was like, it's a little hard to plug in the guitar cable into the output jack. So I pull the output jack off, and I'm looking, and everything is wired right. But I ordered a new one. Put the new output jack in. Guitar works. Charles Sparkley is back now with the new pickups, and it sounds so much better. Not to mention, it looks a lot better with that pearl humbucker in there, and then the two metal coils, as they call it, not gold foil, metal foil. Had to go with a white selector there because the black one didn't fit on. It actually just broke when I tried to put it on. Had to route everything out. I've got a little sticker there, not sticker, a little jewel there. That's the hole from the old coil tap switch. Yeah. And now it does sound great. So you've seen I don't have any of the actual work I did on this after that first day with the time lapses that I showed because I was aggravated. I didn't think it was going to work. I thought I had just ruined Charles Sparkley. But I didn't. It was just an output jack. And let's go through some of the sounds. What you say? So, what's some of the things that I learned about this little adventure here? This was just phase one. I didn't change the tuning pegs like I talked about. That comes next, down the road a little bit. One thing I did learn is when you're wiring up pickups, don't put the entire guitar back together until you know that they work. I had it all back together, strung it up, plugged it in, didn't work. So I had to take it apart again. Well, how do you test guitar pickups if you don't have it in? How do you see if it's working? Well, I learned, and other people that work on guitars probably know this trick. I should have known this trick. It's the old, hey, I can play For the Love of God without ever practicing trick, where you take your phone and you play Steve Vai's For the Love of God and place it right over the pickup, and, well, the song then comes through the guitar. So, once I got the new jack and I was starting to work on it, instead of putting everything back together, putting a new set of strings on, what I did is I used the iPhone trick, the For the Love of God trick, and put the iPhone right over the pickups, and I'll be darned, they were coming through the amp. Once that happened, I went ahead, did a little bit more routing because I have a feeling that the output jack was a little bit too big for the space in here, because I had to do a lot of routing in here to make things fit. So it's probably a little bit. The reason it was so hard to plug it in is that I think it bent a little on the inside. So I routed out a little bit in there so that the plug fits in more naturally. And I think that worked. Got everything back together, put it all together, and it works. So yeah, that's the thing I learned. Don't put the whole guitar back together until you know the pickups are working. Also, don't just say, wow, I must have done everything wrong. This is simple stuff. I mean, go through and figure out what's wrong. And it just took me a little while, but it was the output jack. So that was it. Now, Charles Sparkley's back to playing, back to my number one, and gonna have some fun with it. It's got some great new sounds with these new pickups. It really upgraded the guitar. I did talk about the neck in the last video, or the first part of this video, should I say. I'm not changing the neck. You know, I'm getting over the fact that I have to answer for that Memphis thing. But now that I'm upgrading the guitar, this is mine. It's a build now. It's my guitar. It's not anymore just a Samick. It's mine. And I do love the way this neck plays. So I'm going to keep the neck. I will be upgrading the tuning, the tuners though, because they're not that great. And I am not a whammy bar guy. Even with the whammy bar here, I barely ever use it. And if I do, it's just kind of like a wobble thing. So I think I'm going to put a block in here and just be done with it. It's now a hardtail. I think I'm going to do that. I may change my mind, but I think I may do that. So next phase, tuners, and probably blocking off the bridge. Just because, like I said, and I think I said in the first part of this video, it's cheap. It's cheap. It doesn't even have a block. It just has some bent steel in there where a block is supposed to be. So turning this into a stop tailpiece will even, I mean, this guitar does have good tuning stability even with the bad tuners. So taking all of movement out of the bridge, I think it'll make it even more stable tuning wise. And I'm just not a whammy bar player. Not. I try, but just not my style. And it's really nice now, talked about in the first part of this video, that the coil split on the original way this was wired, the coil split only worked in the second position, which was these two pickups. Now I have coil split whether I'm in the bridge position or the second position, which is really good because sometimes I want that single coil bridge pickup sound, and I have that now. And it's really bright. I love these pickups. The Humbucker's powerful. It's not super high output, but it's got a pretty good output, and it's very bright sounding, and I like that. And these two, man, they just have a very unique flavor to them. I mean, like a new style of pickup would, an update on the gold foil, the metal foil pickups here. Overall, it's been an adventure. Learned a lot, and gonna have some great times creating with this. Back to being my number one. And maybe I'll come back when I do the tuners and do the bridge, but probably not, because that's not as cool as pickups and things like that. But that's where we are. That's where we are with Charles Sparkley, man.